Hello everyone, Ben here, and welcome to today's video on the Presidents of the United States. We are going to be talking about John Adams, the second president, a Federalist from the state of Massachusetts. Just a few life facts. He was born in 1735, and he actually died on July 4th, 1826. The 50th anniversary of the passage of the Declaration of Independence. He had 6 children: Abigail, John Quincy Adams, who was the 6th president, Susanna, Charles, Thomas, and Elizabeth. Susanna only lived for a few months or a year, and Elizabeth was stillborn, as noted. His home is Peacefield, which is in what is now Quincy, Massachusetts. At the time it was called Braintree. He was president from 1797 until 1801, and his home state was Massachusetts. Just a little bit about his early life to about the Revolution. He was Harvard educated, became a lawyer in 1759 when he was admitted to the Massachusetts bar. His most notable legal case was the trial of the British soldiers who shot into a crowd in an incident known as the Boston Massacre. He managed to have 6 of the 8 acquitted and 2 have their murder charges reduced to manslaughter. He was actually nervous to take on the case because he thought it would reduce his stature in the colonies, especially with anti-British sentiment increasing, but he finally did it on his belief that everyone who is charged of a crime should get representation, and his profile actually was raised by the case, with businesses' law practice increasing dramatically. He was elected as a delegate to both Continental Congresses, not just the second. However, the second is where his best work is known for. He was a member of the committee to write the Declaration of Independence, and he convinced the committee to have Jefferson write the draft. And Jefferson asked why, because Jefferson actually wanted Adams to write it. And Jefferson said, "First, you were from Virginia, and Virginia should be at the head. Second, I am deeply unpopular, and you are not. You are quite the opposite. And third, you can write 10 times better than I can." And Jefferson said, "Well, if your mind is made up, I will do the best I can." During the Revolution, he was the delegate or congressman who held the most, he was on the most committees and held the most committee chairs by a wide margin. He was on something like 79 committees and chaired 22 of them. He was essentially the War Department with a fellow delegate, Benjamin Rush, giving Adams almost exclusive credit for managing to outfit, pay, and organize the Continental Army during that time frame. Post-Revolution, during the years of the Articles of Confederation, Adams served as a diplomat, primarily the ambassador to Holland and Great Britain. He was also one of the ambassadors who helped draft the Treaty of Paris of 1783. He was a member of the Constitutional Convention in the late 1780s and helped ensure the system of checks and balances that we currently enjoy. And he was a favor of a bicameral legislature, which we wound up having. During the Washington administration, Adams was picked as the first vice president, and he was extremely active in debate on the Senate floor, sometimes lecturing the chamber for hours on end. and he cast a total of 29 tie-breaking votes during his 2 terms. He was also instrumental, or at least on the wrong side of the debate, when it came to how to address members of both of the cabinet and the executive branch. He favored more honorific and almost monarchical titles for the president and his staff, including, His Highness, or other, as Jefferson would probably describe them, pretentious terms. However, as we know, he lost, and the Senate chose Mr. President as the title for the president. He was deeply unpopular, obviously, and towards the end of Washington's administration, Adams dialed back in terms of his activity on the Senate chamber, and he helped found and join the Federalist Party with Alexander Hamilton, despite some deep differences in policy ideals. The election of 1796, Adams won a very narrow victory of 71 to 68 over Thomas Jefferson, who wound up becoming his vice president because of the way the Electoral College worked at the time. He carried 9 states, with Maryland and Pennsylvania splitting electors. He won Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire, and 1 vote from Pennsylvania. And there was very little campaigning other than what Aaron Burr would do, and this tradition actually lasted for a very, very long time. His administration was marred by scandal and poor policy decisions. He maintained much of Washington's cabinet, which Jefferson thought would set a bad precedent. He followed Hamiltonian economic policy, which was neither good nor bad. It was just policy. Conflict with France in the XYZ affair. He kind of started a quasi-war with France, which was later resolved by 1800 and during his term. However, the XYZ affair was a very large scandal. However, it made both parties, the Democrat Republicans and the Federalists, very unpopular. It made the Federalists unpopular because they were trying to make a deal with France, and it of course made the Democrat Republicans unpopular because they were fairly pro-France. The Alien Sedition Acts, as well as the Naturalization Act, essentially killed the Federalist Party and the Adams administration, because they made criticizing government officials and congressmen illegal, and also upped the residency period for someone to become a naturalized citizen to 14 years, and at the time, naturalized citizens tended to vote Democrat-Republican. He was the first president to move into the president's mansion and live there. And he was the first president to see the new Capitol. And he delivered his 4th and final State of the Union address in the newly constructed Capitol building's Senate chamber. And he appointed a total of 3 justices to the Supreme Court, the most notable of which being John Marshall, who became the Chief Justice until 1835. The election of 1800, he lost 73 to 65, although Aaron Burr also received 73 electoral votes. The states of Maryland, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina all split their votes. And Adams peacefully relinquished power to the opposing party's candidate, the Democrat-Republicans, who was also his vice president, remember, Thomas Jefferson. His retirement. He retired to a fairly simple life on his farm in Quincy, Massachusetts of, I believe it was Peace something. He actually corresponded with Jefferson after a very large rift in their relationship, and Despite 2 attempts to open a political discourse with Jefferson, Jefferson refused, saying that they could not add anything of value to the discussion of their presidencies, nor would it do any good. And Adams agreed after the second time. Both actually wound up dying on the 50th anniversary of the Declaration's passage in the Continental Congress of July 4th, 1826. And Adams' final words were "Jefferson survives," which turned out to be very untrue, as Jefferson had passed a few hours before. Adams was just unaware of this. So we can't really fault him. He was the longest-lived president until Ronald Reagan passed his mark in 2001, and Adams lived to the ripe age of 90 years old and about 230 days. So almost to 91. And anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.